Let me, is this not gallery? Oh, it's gallery. All right, you got me? I'm talking, I'm here. All right, we're on. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to IDAGIO Live. It's Thursday, so it must be Thursdays with Thomas. Walking through the wonderful collegium of musicians and colleagues that I get to talk to. Some I know very well, some I don't know so well. Everybody you know by name, and the idea is that we can have a nice conversation and you can get to know all of us a little bit better, but especially my guests. And I have a very special guest this evening, the extraordinary musician and conductor, Marin Alsop, who has just taken over the Radio Symphony Orchestra in Vienna, but we're going to get to all those details and everything. Marin, I want to call you Marin. I don't know why. I'll call you Marin. Sorry. Welcome. Nice to see you.
Thank you, Thomas. Great to see you. It's been a long time. We haven't seen each other.
It has been a long time. I want to ask you something. Were you in Sapporo with Lenny way back in the day? Were you there that summer?
No, I was not in Sao Paulo. I went to the Pacific Music Festival with him to open it, and our paths crossed. Maybe that's where it was.
Yeah, that's where.
In Sapporo, yes, that's where it was.
And it was that, and he gave that extraordinary speech, which I remember Harry Kraut almost passed out, about education, and talked about his end of conducting days. I mean, it was an extraordinary moment. You know, there's a plaque on the side of the theater there where he gave that does. I don't know if you've been back. Probably many times.
I just went back this past summer to celebrate their 30th anniversary, and I saw the plaque. I took a picture of it.
I did too. My goodness me, that's a long time ago. So before we get down memory lane and so forth, and ladies and gentlemen, just let me say that we're back in lockdowns all over the world. And part of the reason the IDAGIO Live series took off so well and gave everybody some respite from this never-ending pandemic and troubles that ensues is back when we started in March, was exactly to have us show up in your living room on your computer, have a conversation. Marin is somewhere in America. I think she said Baltimore. I'm somewhere in Austria near Graz, you know, but one of the positive things about this whole time, this last 7 months, is that I think everybody has been unavoidably bumped into a new recognition of a digital universe that is friendly, that is possible, that makes things possible. We are not so geographically limited to have conversations like this and make musicians and music, quite frankly, more accessible and more immediate. And that's the whole idea behind this series. And I'm so grateful that my colleagues accept to come and have an hour chat about life and so forth, and share with us who they are. You have an extraordinary, I must say, when I read everything that you have done, are doing, and maintain, I feel like a complete slacker. So we'll get to that. But first, I don't know much about your early days. Where did you grow up? In a musical family? How did tell us give us the 2-minute Wikipedia.
Sure. Well, my parents were both professional musicians. My father was concertmaster of the New York City Ballet Orchestra. My mother was a cellist in that orchestra. I imagine them sitting. I grew up on 107th in Amsterdam in a basement apartment, 2 rooms, and I imagine them sitting there saying, you know, we really need a pianist. Let's make one. So I was born with a job. I was supposed to fill out the trio, but I really hated the piano. I started playing piano when I was 2.5, 3 years old. I mean, really,
oh my gosh,
it's ridiculous. I retired when I was 6, and then I moved on to my next career. They sort of tricked me into playing the violin, but I loved the violin. It was the right instrument. And so that was it. And then I got to play in orchestra shortly thereafter. And it was really when my dad took me to see a young people's concert with New York Phil, and with, you know, a wacky conductor talking to the audience and jumping around. And of course, that was our dear Lenny Bernstein. And that was the day. I was 9 years old. I said, oh, that's what I want to do. I want to be a conductor. So
wow.
That's the story.
So did Dad play the violin?
He did.
All right. So it was a violin, cello, piano trio.
Exactly. That's what they had hoped for. But of course, my first rebellion was against the piano, and I moved toward violin. So my father had to move over to the viola so we could do a string trio.
I love it. What was it about the piano you didn't like?
It's interesting because I think it's not that I didn't like it. It just didn't really, physically, it wasn't my instrument. And I've worked with a lot of kids in my adult life, and I really believe that there's the perfect instrument for every child. I don't know how you started singing, but I'm sure when you found it, you realize, this is it for me. I can see, 100 kids on all these instruments laid out, and some of them immediately know, that's my instruments. Others really need to try a few things, and find that. So it actually was very informative to me, as an adult looking back, that, we have to really experiment with kids to find their instrument.
Well, we're going to talk about that incredible kids program that you started in Baltimore. It's interesting. Last week I had Milos, the guitarist, with an unspeakable Moldavian Montenegro name, second name, but he described his relationship to the guitar exactly the same way. He was very young, and it just, and even how he talks about it, I love the idea what you say, that every kid, there's an instrument for every kid.
Yeah, I think it's,
and certainly
it's a combination of physical reaction to the instrument, that it feels right, and maybe an oral aspect, it sounds right to you. I don't know, I mean, I imagine as a singer, that would be the ultimate, great instrument. An instrument that's part of your body is probably both a blessing and a curse, I imagine, but that you are autonomous and you can create the sound yourself. For those of us who need external help, it's very important to find the right voice.
That makes sense. Yeah, the whole singer relationship to his voice or her voice is a very complicated one. It is certainly easier to travel than with a cello.
Yes, definitely.
But the problems are the same when you land.
Yeah, of course.
Oh my God! So okay, you were in Lenny's concerts. I only got to watch him on television. I didn't meet Lenny until the year I debuted at the Met, and I was asked to go sing for him an audition. He was putting together a cast for La Boheme, and the great Leonard Bernstein. I was so nervous I could hardly see straight. It was unbelievable. Yeah. So what happened between where did you go to school? That you stayed in New York and went to school?
I went to a private high school just outside of New York, and then I was an undergraduate for a couple of years at Yale University, and then I transferred to Juilliard and finished up my bachelor's and got my master's at Juilliard in violin performance.
All right, wow.
And, but I always wanted to conduct, and so I set out to, I tried to get into school in conducting, and I would get pretty close, but I finally realized the best way would be to just start my own orchestra and figure it out. So that's what I did with all of my friends. I also had a swing band. I liked other kinds of music. So I talked to all my friends from String Fever into being in my orchestra. And I started an orchestra that was in residence at Alice Tully Hall. And we played together for 18 years. It was a long, yeah, it was fantastic, and did a lot of contemporary American music, lots of crossover, jazz influenced music, because I love jazz. And naturally that brought me closer to Bernstein with his eclectic musical embrace,
Well, I think we hear those kinds of stories a lot from American musicians. The eclecticism, whatever lane they happen to be in, there seems to be an awful lot of, from church music to jazz to like you say, swing or popular music, that we schlep with us, as it were. When you were, what was it about conducting specifically? Was it the three-dimension oral fascination or acoustic fascination of instruments and all these people making music, or what is it? That's so young, you knew that's what you wanted to do.
It's a great question. I'm not sure I can really answer it honestly, because I'm not really sure what drew me to it. I mean, of course, at first I think it was partly that I was getting in trouble at Juilliard. I was at the pre-college and playing in the orchestra, and there were a lot of complaints that I was having too much fun and smiling too much, and I thought, oh, this classical music is for the birds. Come on, why do you take yourself so seriously? Even when I was 9, I was thinking that. And then I saw Bernstein and I thought, okay, this guy is having a blast and no one is yelling at him. So I think it was more born out of, okay, if you're the conductor, you can have fun. And
Yeah.
I think also it's partly, it's partly in my nature. I was never a particularly gifted athlete, but I was always the captain of the team. You know what I mean? I like to put people together. And that's what the conductor does. Our role is to enable the musicians to be the best they can be. And
Right.
hopefully in a culture of joy. And that's what I like to do.
You talking about the Juilliard? It reminds me. I'm in the middle of an Ives project, and I know we know Ives so well. But I mean, you can imagine Ives and Arthur Foote going at it.
God, yeah.
And Arthur and Ives said, why does the harmony have to go there? Why can't this wrong note make sense? Because you call a nation of whoosh, So there's something very American about that, I guess. But the making life possible for the musicians to do the best they do. That I hear that from conductors today, and I ask myself if Fritz Reiner or George Zell ever said that. I think Bruno Walter might have said something like that.
Yeah. I mean, this is of course a whole culture of maestro mythology and inaccessibility that really I think doesn't have a space anymore. I hope doesn't have a space anymore. I think that even if they thought that even fleetingly, they certainly would never have said it out loud, because it would have somehow tarnished that external image of the impenetrable, inaccessible maestro, which was so critical to many, many, many careers, even today, a few.
How much feedback, how much back and forth? I mean, when you have your own orchestra and you're building a relationship with RSO, you were many years incredibly successful in Baltimore. You've been all around the world, yada, yada. I mean, there's certainly a difference in coming in and having 3 days of rehearsal and a performance. But my question is, at some point, it has to be about what you are taking the orchestra with you on that journey. On the other hand, you're depending on them showing you the journey they want to go on. How does that dynamic work? Is that a rehearsal thing?
I think that's what's really fascinating about conducting is that it's a constant balancing of, the great thing is that we always have the music to lead us. So I can always say, I'm doing this in support of the composer. I'm the messenger of the composer. So I have a higher authority really to report to in a way. And I think musicians really respond if one is genuine and authentic about being true to the composer. Musicians want the same thing. Conductors and instrumentalists want the same thing. We all want to do a great job for the composer and for the listeners. And I think, that becomes clear as you go along in the rehearsal process.
Do you come across orchestras that don't have that feeling?
Yeah, I mean, occasionally, and I try not to go back there when, because, or I try maybe.
It's depressing.
Well, it's depressing, but more importantly, I try to at least poke at that bubble so that I can say, hey, God, you guys, I'm sorry you don't enjoy life. I mean, it's not about it. I really believe that this is in every single career. There are people that get, they feel disenfranchised. They feel, I don't know, something didn't go their way. And they come at something with a real chip on their shoulder and I feel for people like this. I think it's a terrible way to have to live. I mean, it really breaks my heart. And especially for people who are artists, because art, it's such a privilege to be a musician. At least this is my estimation. And I think if you don't truly enjoy something, you should try to find something else that brings you more joy.
Oh my. You should say that again really slowly for all of the young people, all of our young colleagues watching this conversation, because that is so important. And you have to, I know it's so difficult when you're trying to mentor and be of some use, but sometimes you have to look one of those young people in the eye and say, look, this is not making you happy.
Right.
and I don't know who you think you're going to make happy. You know what this conversation reminds me very much, it almost sounds word for word with conversation I had with Maris Janssens. And also how Maris could sometimes with his own orchestra, you know, he would just stop rehearsal and he would say, look, what's wrong? Do you want to do something else? Go do something else. But here we're going to make music, and it's a privilege. You know, unbelievable. Unbelievable. You have to say it sometimes, don't you?
Yeah, but really less often than you would think. I think that's the exception. I think in general, I find orchestras to be very very receptive and very willing, and I find them fascinating because each orchestra has its own vibe, its own personality. You know, its own sort of inner culture, inside jokes and things. And it's kind of fun to try to figure out what is going on in that whole little ecosystem of that orchestra. But I do believe that this pandemic has brought a new appreciation from everyone for what we do.
Truly.
Including all of us as artists, don't you think?
I absolutely do. And I think coming out of COVID, I think we're going to have more support and more willingness to go on a wider repertoire conversation. I think people are really waiting to hear other things than just another of this and that. And that's what my big hope is, not just in the vocal world, but just in general. But
no, it's really exciting. I'm teaching, I'm the head of the conducting at Peabody, and I do some teaching at MDW as well. And I'm trying to impress upon the young conductors, especially, that this is a moment of tremendous opportunity where you can define yourself through repertoire, because everyone's open to new ideas at the moment. I mean, when has our industry embraced new ideas? I mean, you know, I'm sure even Beethoven had his uphill battles, you know, when they say, hey, why did you add that choir? You really ruined the piece. You know, I think that, I think this is a really, as you said, it's a unique moment in the industry.
Now, you've mentioned, you referenced Peabody. I'm looking at such a list of things. I must say what stuck in my mind, I love the Sao Paulo Symphony Orchestra. You're still down there, aren't you? You're still working with them? In that extraordinary, used to be a train station, right?
Yeah.
It's amazing.
I'm actually going back on Saturday for a couple of weeks with them. So
can you go back and forth like that?
Well, I don't know whether I can. I've decided I will. So let's see if I can make it. I had my COVID test this morning. So, you know, armed with my paperwork, I seem to be able to get back and forth. And fortunately, I have an Irish passport from that, thanks to my granddad. So it makes me a little less terrifying than if I had a U.S. passport.
At the moment, I'm afraid a U.S. passport is not great. I mean, what a mess over there. But this isn't a political show. We're not going to go there. So I mean, okay, we're going to talk about the RSO, so Bournemouth Symphony Orchestra. You are still principal conductor there?
No, I finished there quite a while ago in 2007.
Okay. So, but you have this list of you know, just like I said, ladies and gentlemen, if you read her bio, which I want you to do, go to her website, read this bio, see everything that she's got her finger in, and there's a couple of things we're really going to look at. There's another thing, because it will motivate you to get off your sofa and keep moving. I love the fact you're the only conductor to receive the prodigious MacArthur Award. Was that some time ago?
I was awarded the MacArthur Prize in 2005. So it was a long time ago, but it came at a perfect moment because I was just taking over the Baltimore Symphony.
Right.
It's been been a long time now, and it was a great boost of confidence, and also the finances of it enabled me to start the Orchids program here in Baltimore. So
Let's talk about that. Let's
great.
talk about that.
Sure.
Let's just jump in. Baltimore, wonderful tenure, MacArthur Award, kick it off. And you've got this fantastic program called what?
It's called Orchids. It was started from the idea of orchestra kids, and then ORCH kids.
I love it.
And we started in 2008 with 30 first graders as an after-school program. And now today we have over 2,000 kids playing musical instruments. And, you know, I never dreamt it would happen so quickly, but even that first class of Orchids, they're now, of course, 12 years later, they've just graduated from high school. And
have a lot of them gone on into music?
Amazingly, yes. Music management, music education. You know, the program transformed their lives on many, many levels. And they want to bring that back to their communities and take it to more and more kids. So I've been more inspired by their achievements than anyone I've ever met. Really, the kids are doing great. And in this COVID moment, you know, Baltimore is a very poor city and with very few resources. But my team at Orchids have they've got every kid online. They managed to figure out a device for every household. And,
oh my God.
Almost 85% of the kids are now having private lessons online. So it's actually increased their tutelage. So they're getting more attention now than they were before. Of course, they suffer, though, from a lack of in-person engagement, as we all do.
Are you seeing what is really wonderful is music education as it augments general education? Right. I mean, I think a lot of times politicians think when we talk about music education is because we're needing more people in our orchestra and more people trying to be professionals. And I don't think that's the point at all. I think in music education, simply the humanities education, what we used to call liberal arts education with some pride in America, which is obviously a sore point among some of us. That it augments the putting everything together. And when you talk about your kids as they're going through this program and they're practicing, do you see any results? Are they measured, or anybody talking about the fact that they're just better students, especially some of the perhaps more disadvantaged ones?
Oh, sure. I mean,
are they enjoying school more?
America, the one thing we really love to do is measure everything here. I mean, we got to.
Yeah, I hate it.
We got to measure this. We waste so much time.
Can I take the word back?
No, but it's so true that, but so we do. And indeed, of course, as you would, you know this intrinsically, the kids do much better academically. They attend on average, when they're in school, they attend more than 2 weeks more than their colleagues who aren't in the program. So their absentee rate is much less. Part of the contract that they have to sign, every kid has to sign a contract, and it really commits to sort of a code of behavior, a commitment to academics, and also a commitment to being a good citizen. And it's fantastic, because these kids really step up. I think often we don't challenge young people enough to be the best they can be.
I agree completely. The other thing, I don't know if you find yourself challenging the young people. I've been working with an awful lot of singers lately, and you have you have 130 applicants for 10 positions, and I'd love to have a program where all these kids can be doing what you got them doing. But I think the other thing we have to challenge them to is, there's absolutely no dearth of young people who want to become musicians, either professionally or just for their own pride and stuff. But we do not have young people wanting to become a musical audience. And so I've been challenging my youngs, and I asked my kids this. I said, what colleague from social sciences or history or whatever they're studying, or athletics or physical therapy, which one did you take by the hand to the concert the last week that you knew you had to go and hear? What do you guys talk about? Do you have only friends in the musical? And it's been a very enlightening dialogue conversation for me. in fact, most of the musicians' friends are within the musician world. And I find that frustrating because it's them that's going to ingratiate or inspire people that don't have to be a musician but just love to go to music.
Yeah.
How do we do that?
But
Am I off base?
No, I think you're spot on that that the best introduction to music is through a friend, and rather than an adult, although that's where it maybe starts. But I think we need to start thinking about art in a different way. That, as you, I think, started by saying, it's not an add-on. It's not something you can kind of take off. It's a building block. It's part of a whole person education. As Plato understood, as Aristotle understood, that art is part of the final product of who we are. And for me, the compelling part, particularly when, in my experience in playing an instrument, is the resulting skill set that one develops from doing this. You learn how that applying yourself every day is the only way to improvement. You learn to motivate yourself to practice, to successfully or not. You learn how to budget your time. Then you start to learn how to listen to other people, how to back off, how to step forward, how to interact. All of these skills put together the great 21st century person. And if I were an employer looking for an ideal employee, I would be looking for these qualities in the person. Someone who's adaptable, who will work hard on their own, who can think outside the box, can always be creative. To me, it's really not about creating musicians, not about creating audiences. It's about creating a society that is open and interested in what's going on,
One wonderful thought. Mark Cuban, the philanthropist.
I know Mark. Yeah, I don't know him, but yeah.
I think he's incredible. I'd love to meet him. But he gave a talk in front of a bunch of MBAs, and he said essentially the same thing. Everything you guys are studying right now, the machines are going to do in 5 years. So, what do you know about art history? What do you know about why people do what they do? How do they know what they think? You want to watch the stock market? Think about what they're thinking about. It was a wonderful speech. Look, there's three Marins we can have a conversation with. There's the conductor's Marin. There is the amazingly accomplished Marin. There is this eclectic repertoire crazy, and now you're in a. I mean that very endearingly. I love it. And then there's the Marin that you seem to be so incredibly busy at the moment with these various mentoring programs, because you've got the orchids there, and tell us about the Taki Alsop conducting fellowship. That's been on for a while as well.
Yeah, thank you for asking. This is I expected many women after me to sort of be coming into conducting. And as you well know, Thomas, 5 years, 10 years, 15, I kept thinking, well, where is everybody? And so I thought, if I don't try to do something to change this landscape, who is, if I'm not going to do it? So I started a fellowship in 2002 for women conductors, named after the gentleman that helped me found my first orchestra, Mr. Taki, Tomio Taki. And I wanted to say thank you to him, somehow in perpetuity. And we've had 24 recipients of the award, and they're doing, 18 of them are music directors right now. They're doing phenomenally well. I know, no, it's amazing. They're super, super talented, but more importantly, they have a community now of each other. They have a support system, and they're trying to, I really go back to their communities and pay it forward. And that's what I love about it. So, and during this COVID time, we've been able to gather, online and meet almost weekly, which has been fantastic.
Let's talk about the elephant in the room, and that's women conductors, or this idea that of a woman. I mean, I don't. I'm smiling and I'm being a bit sarcastic about it because it doesn't really make any sense. I'm going to put it right up there with talking about when we talk about American song and we talk about Black American poets and Black American composers, and I want to say, wait a minute. Isn't what they're doing American? Aren't they American poets? And yes, they happen to be African American, but aren't we talking in the same way that, the wonderful, I don't know if you ever came across a woman named Eleanor Remick Warren in Los Angeles, composer, lived in 92, made some extraordinary cantatas. Big heyday was in the 30s and the 40s. I recorded a lot of her work. And she did a radio program once for, I think it was a question and answer thing. And it was titled, There's No Gender in Music. And I've taken that title. I've done my own, celebrating women's creativity in America. That was the headline of it. What is that? And I'm just kind of trying to set up because I just wanted to talk about it. Were you discriminated against? Did you always feel like there was a stop, or you didn't quite get as far? Do you think your career would have had a different trajectory if you were a man? All of these awful questions. I don't mean to politicize them, but because we seem to be in a serious wave forward in our mentality, and also women conductors, and I think that's very positive. But maybe it's worthwhile to look at how many weeds everything had to get crawled through. Does that make sense to you?
Well, to a certain extent, I think in some ways, it's important to remember the past, but it's important to appreciate the moment that we're in, that everyone's hard efforts to advance gender equality, they got a huge push forward with the Me Too movement, no doubt about it. I mean, it saddens me that it had to be, abuse of women that ended up enabling some doors to open, but that's indeed what happened. And once the doors open, people start thinking, well, look at these women, they're talented. And I think to myself, well, there have been talented women around for decades. It's just no doors were open to them. So it's
Right.
all about continuing to keep the opportunities flowing. I would say in my career, the only regret I have is that I didn't have the same opportunity to make as many mistakes as my male colleagues. For women, when you have
Well put.
one chance, you really can't make a mistake. So you can't really be that much of a risk taker. Do you know what I mean? You have to try to play it a little bit safe. So that would be my only
or feeling like you can prove that you can do it as well as if da 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 da.
Well, I don't know.
Like you can.
That for me is a slippery slope. My feeling is I can only do it as well as I can. I can only be me.
Yes.
I can't be anybody else. And but people ask me this question, do we really need things just for women? And I think to myself, well, sorry, not to be disparaging toward you. It's usually just men that ask me that question because, I think, look, the only reason we need these opportunities specifically for women is because men didn't let them in. There were opportunities. You could have not you, but, you as the capital you could have let women in 20 years ago and chose not to.
Easily.
Yeah. So, but when we think about Bernstein, I love to go back to him because, he was someone who also was of another generation. And he had trouble wrapping his mind around a woman as a conductor. I know we had that discussion many times, yet that didn't stop him from supporting women in the field. And one of his very first assistant conductors at the New York Philharmonic, well, maybe it wasn't, maybe not the first, it was in 1966, was a woman, a Swiss woman named Sylvia Kadouf, who's still alive. She's in her 80s, and we've become good friends. And he helped her, and Karajan helped her as well. So, it's so interesting. It's just their stories aren't even told anymore. It's also how history reports it. So what you started with, Thomas, about talking about how we have to look back at history. But the challenge is that the history that's recorded doesn't even include these women.
Right.
So that's a big issue. But I'm so happy to see opportunities opening up. My feeling is that my job now is to be vigilant, to keep the doors open on behalf of all the women, and also to be the vocal part of older women in the field, because there haven't been older women in this field either, and it's a little
That's
bit like
true.
Hollywood, So I'm not I'm not at a loss for new causes. Let's put it that way.
Certainly not. When were you up at Tanglewood with Lenny?
Yeah, I really started working with him at Schleswig-Holstein in '87, and then I went to
Ah,
Tanglewood the next 2 years.
right. He was unbelievably demanding, wasn't he?
Oh yeah, definitely. But
Oh
I
yeah.
remember
Could he get?
those
Could he get?
Mahler songs you did with him, and I remember that look in your eye, which was, I thought, a combination of complete awe and terror.
That's a pretty good mixture at that young age. That was such a long time ago. Of course, Lenny also had such a wonderful. I remember walking out for the first rehearsal, and I'm going to say a bad word, ladies and gentlemen, so be prepared. And I walked out, I was terrified. And it was Rainer Küchel, who was the concertmaster, prodigious, icon, and, shook his hand, and he sort of, obligatorily, as they can be. And so anyway, here's this kid. And Lenny stands up on the podium, raises his hands, he looks over and he says, "Ah, shit. He's still taller than I am." and thank God he had that reaction, because that just kind of broke the ice and it was fine. But it was more awe than terror. It was, if anyway, the terror was the expectation of myself.
Yeah.
My awe was boundless, and Lenny loved what I did, and he was so incredibly, when he loved somebody and he was supportive, you just flew. You were Icarus, so you had to be very careful. So those are a great time. Did you have that kind of experience with him as well? Was there ever a time he came up, threw his arms around you and said, "This is incredible"?
I have this video of him sort of charging the podium at the end of Matthias der Maler and just jumping on me, So it's very funny. It's in my file as
was it the
run.
Was it the whole opera, or just the Hymn with the big?
It was just the symphony at Tanglewood, and he went crazy at the end. But as you say, you felt that you had died and gone to heaven when he's shown his praise and adulation on us as young people. It was a great experience. And
do you carry that with you for other kids? Are you aware sometimes, I probably need to, really give that person whatever plateau that this needs to be recognized. This is as best as they can be right now, and it's damn good.
Yeah. I try. I became a parent quite late in life, and I think that's the biggest takeaway I have, is that it's so important to point out the good things that people do. And so I try to do that much more with my students now. And but I'm not Lenny. I have to be true to myself, and that's just part of, I'm a much more sort of understated, sarcastic New Yorker, and that's who I am. So I try to, in my own curmudgeonly, sarcastic way, I try to give them my support.
So how does that work in a program in Paris called La Maestra?
Yeah, no, I was so happy to, because of all the scheduling changes, I was able to be free to serve on the jury for this inaugural competition, which was fantastically run and beautifully put together by the partners, the Philharmonie and Claire Gibault and her orchestra, Mozart Orchestra in Paris.
Right.
And it was really great, and I was, of course, enormously proud that 6 of the semifinalists and 2 of the 3 winners were Taki awardees.
I love it.
It was great.
Oh, good for you. So let's move to Vienna. You just started your tenure. It just begins this year, right, with the RSO?
No, I just started my second year, but of course last year was curtailed quite a bit. Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, what has your schedule been like? I mean, this nonsense hit. I don't mean to be flippant, ladies and gentlemen. I'm trying to be light touched about it. This horrible time, this awful time hit in March. Was your calendar just turned upside down, inside out too?
Oh yeah, I was in the middle of Mahler 3 rehearsing in Baltimore, fortunately at near home, and I remember saying to the management at the Baltimore Symphony, I said, maybe we should try to film this dress rehearsal because I have a feeling we won't be seeing each other for a while. No, it'll be fine. And lo and behold, that was it. So then
Wow.
everything was canceled for me. I think the next thing I did conducting was in Vienna in August.
Wow, when you came back.
Yeah.
Well, it seems, I mean, I have a little bit of sensitivity to the Viennese grapevines and blood, and it seems to be. I didn't make it to the concerts. I'm sorry. I will see you soon, I hope, here in Vienna.
Together. Yeah, it'd be great.
Well, I was hoping you would say that publicly because then I can hold you to it. and I've prepared a small list. You'll find it in the chat window. But I mean, the tenure seems to have gotten off to a rollicking start, which is, and I mean that in a positive way. You've garnered some, as the Viennese can be, cautiously effusive reactions. I mean, you can always tell when they are truly excited, but they're nervous if they're too excited it'll go bad because they're superstitious and they can't obviously show that they have emotions. So they have to be, but never mind, you've had some wonderful press, but more importantly, the word of mouth amongst the colleagues is just extremely positive. And I want to, lift my hat. I want you to maybe tell us some of the plans you've got, some of the repertoire ideas. Are you shaking the tree a little bit and what they've been doing or need to learn or should explore?
It's so much fun because, this is like yet another new treasure chest of repertoire to look at, which is really the European, particularly the Austrian contemporary music, which is not something I've had a lot of exposure to. So I always enjoy working with living composers and learning new music. And at the same time, I think I'm able to bring them something different. I opened my first concert with a piece by American composer Christopher Rouse, who just recently passed away. And
I know he said,
and they love the piece. So, I feel that I can bring some things to share that will be interesting and intriguing and challenging. And I can also, take quite a lot from the situation. How it's great with the radio symphony because we can play. I mean, we played Mahler 5 a few weeks ago, and then the next week we play Henze and, something completely off the wall. So it's great, the breadth of repertoire. That's what I really enjoy.
And that's an RSO agenda, really. I mean, that's part really of their thing.
Mission. It's the mission of the orchestra.
So were you given like a list of, we'd like to see this over the next couple of years, and some of you think, oh, I never heard of that, or I've never thought that, or have you been surprised or anything?
Oh yeah, with the, together with the with Christoph Becher, the intendant, we sit down and go through a lot of repertoire, and he'll say, look, we've been interested in these composers, and what a world we live in. We can just Google people and check things out these days. Isn't it incredible? I mean, I can get through a dozen composers in an afternoon, it used to take me a whole week to look through scores and stuff. So it's really great. And I've met several composers, and in my first concert, I also did a piece by Lehrer Auerbach. I don't know if you know.
Oh yeah.
Wonderful piece. So that was
wonderful piece.
New relationship, and I had a director from Vienna, a young woman. It's for me, it's meeting these new people, developing these new relationships that it's really exciting.
And you're up at the Music University of Vienna as well as a guest lecturer in conducting?
Yes.
And I suppose boys and girls, men and women?
Men and women, and and everyone in between, I hope. And yeah, they have a very robust and program and really strong class, and I'm happy to be there. And as it turns out, there's someone from Tanglewood Days who's on the faculty, and one of their main professors is Mark
Oh,
Stringer.
wow. All right. I know the
That's
name.
kind,
I don't remember.
that's kind of neat, but all of their faculty is impressive, and I love working with all of them. And so, for me, I used to think, I wonder why he moved to Vienna. I mean, I don't know the real reason, but I can only imagine because it's such a gorgeous city. And you know what I like the most about it? I have the sense that people help each other. They support each other. They try to. I know there's this sort of Viennese thing, but I feel that there's a genuine caring about humankind that I'm missing sometimes.
When the chips are down like they are now,
Yes.
that is definitely Viennese, without question. When everybody is on a high flight, be a little bit guarded.
Okay. Okay, that's good to know.
But I don't mean to be so, as we say in German, obergescheit. By the way, how's your German?
Yeah, it's coming. I just signed up for a German intensive starting on January 11th. So speak to me around March and let's see how I'm doing.
I love it. When do you come back to Vienna? When's your next concert?
Well, I have a concert December 12th. So fingers crossed I'll get from Brazil back into Vienna. And then my family and I will be sort of setting up shop there on middle of January for a while.
Okay, good. We'll be in and out. We'll find each other. By
Okay.
the way, I want to go back to the music university. Have you had much chance to work with that incredible rectorin, Ulrike
She's
Schüch?
incredible. No, she's amazing. Amazing.
She's another person. It's like I think she gets up in the morning and she unplugs herself from the wall socket and just goes 150 miles an hour and then goes back and plugs herself. I mean, she's like an electric car. It's an amazing. She's done amazing things in Vienna generally, but especially at the university.
Yeah, no,
Have you had much time? Does she have?
Yes. Yeah, we just had lunch the other day, and I love working with her, and we're cooking up a lot of projects together, so it's great.
It's fantastic. All right, so what have I got left? I've got one last thing. Oh my God, yes. And if that isn't enough, ladies and gentlemen, we have, what are you, the music director and chief conductor and bottle washer at Ravinia?
Yeah, this is a new position, which I love working with the Chicago Symphony. And so I've been there for several years, and then they made it official with a title. So but of course, my first season then got canceled, like so many people.
Of course.
But I'm looking forward to opening with 3 weeks next summer in July. Right. So I'm sure you've been to Ravinia, haven't you?
Back in the day, a lot. I have, and over the years, I was there a couple of years ago. I had the Song of America tour there, and even 2 years ago, I did an Americana concert that I programmed with them, this Chicago Symphony in their subscription series. So they're a wonderful orchestra. I love Chicago.
Yeah, me too.
Have you spent a lot of time there over the years?
Oh, just a little bit, and I love the city, but I love Ravinia. That's almost a whole different ecosystem unto itself out there. But
no, I think it is.
What a beautiful venue, and wonderful family. They're committed to supporting the arts. So I'm really excited about that as well. So yeah, I mean, I'm feeling, knock on wood, I'm feeling very fortunate these days. And, my heart just goes out to all of our colleagues who are struggling.
Oh my.
And I wonder how we can try to create an embrace of art in the future that is more inclusive.
Well said, and it's worth bearing, since we're talking about it briefly, that the COVID situation for musicians is bad all over, especially freelance, but even union musicians, and it's a completely different set of pain in Europe versus America. When you think that America, that over 1,200 orchestras have been silent for 4 or 5 months, meaning that everyone involved in that orchestra, from backbenchers to executive, are getting no pay whatsoever. The Met Orchestra has been decimated. New York, I mean, it is a horrible situation for economic for people, and of course, there've been a lot of victims of COVID as well. It has been, as musicians that we get to work and start to make concerts again. And I've only had a couple. I must say, my career, my calendar's been completely torn apart. But the few times that I've done some concerts and recitals, you can just feel the energy of everyone loving the music. The music's back in the veins. I feel it. They feel it. You could hear a pin drop. Everybody's just embracing the live music. And I feel somehow that all of those concerts are also for those who don't get to do it, or those who are no longer with us. And I don't mean to be melodramatic about it, but we're going to have that feeling for some time, I think.
I think so too.
And I hope also, by the way, and coming out of this, thank you very much for your time. And what are you studying right now?
Right now I'm studying Dvorak's Serenade for Strings. Everything I do at the moment is small, nice little things. And some pieces by this composer who I'm absolutely adore. Jessie Montgomery is her name, American composer. And she's still quite young. And so check out her stuff. I don't know if she's done any songs, but really good music.
Well, tell her to. I was going to take everybody to IDAGIO. I want to say IDAGIO.com, everybody, is, of course, your most unbelievably database ecosystem for streaming music. And we were talking about all these composers. There are over 20,000 classical music composers. I didn't even know there were 20,000 classical music composers. So you've got your streaming platform. From last March, we have built this wonderful program for many of us that have joined it in the IDAGIO Live, everything from Yvonne Fischer talking about Mahler. And I think we need to have a series with Marin Alsop on those two 20-minute segments. You don't have anything else to do, to talk about whatever you want to do. But everything from these kinds of programs, I do a Tuesday evening show about song. And then, of course, in June, what was very exciting was the launching of the Global Concert Hall. And the Global Concert Hall is we haven't talked about digitized music tonight, and we'll maybe get that in another conversation, but it's really kind of what I describe as a third rail of performance, meaning that we're now producing for analog, meaning people sitting there, whether it's 2 or 2,000, and digital, which is going to be a huge public going forward in classical music. And it's more than just taking an electronic picture. It is really having musicians available before and especially after the performances to have what we call a digital green room. All sorts of orchestras are signing up from the Vienna Philharmonic to the LSO. Yo-Yo Ma's been on it. I'm sure there are conversations going on with RSO. It's a very, very exciting performing platform. And this third rail is going to certainly be with us for the next 8 or 9 months and on into the future. Out of crises, I think somebody told me once that the Chinese word for crises has an implication. Part of the word has an implication to opportunity, and I think that's exactly as you've said so eloquently in all your descriptions. That's the time we live in. We are in a crisis, and out of this crisis, we will reinvent opportunities for inclusion, for more public. Or as Lenny would say, well, if they're angry, we play it louder. Meaning we just keep playing loud music. We keep playing and being there. He was, of course, talking about some of the strife in the civil rights movement. But music is with us. We will find other ways. You're in so many wonderfully innovative organizations that lead what the RSO can do for us in Vienna and for Austria and the world in general. I think is extraordinarily exciting. It's been fun to talk to you, be caught up. And ladies and gentlemen, you heard Marin Alsop invite me to.
I look forward to getting that repertoire list. Send it on, Thomas.
Here we go. I will find you. You said you're going to be in December. You're going to be in Vienna?
I'll be in Vienna. I have a concert at the Concerthaus on December 12th. So I'm around.
I'll try and. What is it? What's the rep?
Oh, it's fantastic. It's a one-piece concert. It's called Blood on the Floor by Mark.
Yeah. Oh, can you just give us a hint of what that's about?
Oh, well, this is a heavy duty. It's really a huge jazz-oriented piece and it's dedicated to his brother, who was a drug addict. So it has,
Right.
you know, this unbelievable narrative underpinning, and it's, you know, it's fantastically energetic and also poignantly sad. It's just a really great piece, and we're featuring some wonderful local jazz soloists with us. So I hope people can come out. Listen, the first thing I hope is that we can have the concert, and even if we don't have the concert, we'll live stream it from the ORF. So one way or the
Right.
other, people will be able to tune into it.
Great. Marin, it's been great. Thank you so much. Wish
my
you
pleasure.
be safe. Godspeed. I'll see you soon, I hope. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you for. Sorry, go ahead. What?
No, I promise. I promise we'll see each other soon.
We will. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us. Have a wonderful evening and the rest of your week. I'll see you next week. I'm not sure who's coming, but it should be fun.